Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about splines and some things. Um, so right off the bat, spline tool. I create a sketch and we've got splines. You've got spline, style splines, equation driven curves. We're not going to worry about equation driven curves at this point, nor will we probably worry about it next semester. It's just not something that we need to use. Engineers do many times. To be honest with you, I don't even know when or if I've ever used them. So let's talk about a spline and what makes up a spline. So the whole point of a spline is that it is a continuous amount of curves, or sorry, radiuses. So even though this is, let's just go with a 3-point arc here. Whoops. So here we have a 3-point arc. If I was to dimension that, okay, we're in millimeters, so let's go with 1200. What that means is that it's a 3-point arc. It is a constant radius through the whole point, which means that the rate of curvature never changes. So if I click on this line, I right click and I go show curvature combs, you get exactly that. It is constant, never changing. That's where you get with the radiuses on the highlights. So as you roll through this highlight, it will never look any different. Now, I can come in and let me just do another 3-point arc here. I'll toss on a dimension. Come on. Dimension. I just wanted to get it to be the same. Now I'm going to use this and I'm going to create it as a construction line just as a reference point. So here, exact same thing. Let's just get over here. There we go. It's going to have the exact same feel and look and shape, but if I come in now and I take my spline and I do to the 2 points, you'll see that even though I snap to it, it's not giving me what that radius is. It's the same because it's not a constant. I can come in and I can tweak and edit to get it as close as I can. But you'll notice by doing this, I'm never going to get it quite there. And the reality is well, why would I do that? If I'm trying to get a shape of an arc, see how this is nice, smooth, and consistent? If I come in and I put curvature combs on this, you'll see what's going on. And what this represents is the contour of the surface. So I can.
What's that called? I missed you clicking the little drop down menu.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who was that?
The Bryce.
Bryce? Okay, so what I'm doing is clicking on the curve, right click. So there's a couple different ways. So if I click on the curve, on the left hand side, I have show curvature.
Yeah, I've never even known that existed. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, the other way I can do it is instead of going to the left hand side, I can click on it, right click, and then I have my show curvature combs here. So it's same thing, it's just a matter of where do I want to click. So what this does though is it tells you how good is your curve. You know, what is your curve doing that you can't see? Because if I come in and let's say I delete that, I'll turn off my curvature comb here. If I zoom out, that curve looks not bad. I could say, hey, it looks pretty close to this, which is a nice smooth surface. And then I can say, well, okay, so let's extrude both of these. And for all intents and purposes, they look the same. Let us hide the top one. Or let's hide the bottom one, sorry. There. So you can see that highlight is nice. It's consistent. It goes all the way across. Let's turn on curvature of the surface. Wow. It's all one color because there's absolutely no variable change. Let's toss on zebra striping. You can see that, and the zebra striping, again, we talked about that last time. It kind of just shows what it would look like for a light to bounce across it. Let's really crank up the resolution there. You can see that, there's no kinks or indents. It's nice, smooth arcs. All of that is telling me that I've got a nice, clean, smooth surface. Now let's turn back on the one that we thought looked just as good. We'll turn on the zebra striping. Well, kind of see some of the... So let's look down here. Nice and clean. But now let's look at this one. See how this starts to wobble? That is telling me that I've got something funky going on. Let's switch them, see what happens when I go vertical. So from a standpoint of rotating them, everything looks nice and smooth going this way. But what it's saying is, hey, there might be a problem in the opposite direction. So I'm going to double click on that, make them horizontal. And I can kind of start seeing that here it's not a nice smooth, it kind of dives in. So that's telling me there's a wave there. Let's take a look at, we'll turn that off. You can see that there is a change in curvature. So, for example, if I have this curvature on, when I put my mouse over this surface, as I move it, it tells me that it is a curvature of 1200 millimeters radius at all times. Now if I take it and I move over top of here, we got 1305, 1313, 1235, 1016. So what you can see is it's not a perfect arc. If my intent was to have a perfect arc, obviously I have an issue. So again, didn't see that in the curve because the curve looked pretty good. Let me just scroll down. We'll edit that sketch.
Did that happen just because you offset it, or?
No, so I didn't offset it. This is a new,
Oh.
This is the spline that I created.
Okay.
But because it's a spline and it's not, 100% a 3-point arc, there's a chance for me to get things a little bit more wrong. So
Yeah.
if I click on it, so this is build, evaluate, refine. If I had built this and in the beginning before doing anything else, show my curvature combs, I would realize, oh, that is not what I want whatsoever. Because what this is telling me is I have a constant rate of curvature here. So if let's see if I can do this. Yes. Oh no, it's giving me the length. Never mind. I can't do that in here.
Are you recording, Travis?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So I can see here, much like this. So this is a perfect radius. It's going along nicely. While here you can see I have a very consistent arc, but then here it gets to be larger. Then I get a flat spot, and then it starts to go out again. So what that shows up is in your highlights, a flat spot. So using this is always so important. Now, if I was to come back and do a spline, let me just see if I can do it here. Ah! So what I'm doing is, oh, come on, creating some dimensions in order to perhaps control my spline a little bit better. Oh, come on, Chevy.
We allowed to call you that, or is that a thing you can only call yourself?
That's what I was just thinking.
I was gonna ask that too.
Yeah. Only a few people call me that. I call myself that when I'm frustrated, but you know what? We all have to go beyond what our social comfort graces are. If you want to refer to me as Chevy, that's fine.
Cool. Sounds good, Chevrolet.
Yeah, don't push it.
Okay.
You know, I gave you an inch, you took a foot. So here you see now that I'm controlling things a little bit better, but it's not going to be a perfect arc, and I'm never going to get it there. And you can see that splines are hard to manage, you know, so if I'm trying to get that perfect arc, you know, it's going to be difficult. It's just the way things are. You can see here I've got a bump now. You know, well, oh, how am I going to fix that? Well, I've got a bump in it because this is angled at that point. So if I come in and I edit this, you know, it's not perfectly smooth at the top. And I can try to play with it and tweak it, you know, but this curvature comb right off the bat is telling me, is the spline doing what I want? If I want it to be a nice smooth surface, I'm not getting it. Now I can come in and do some things where I can select the line. So just like relationships in your 2D drawings, I'm going to say at this point, I want this curve to be perfectly straight and aligned with that. So I'm going to make it a relationship, and I'm going to make it collinear. And now you can see I've got it flat, but the problem is I've adjusted the curve. And I've adjusted the length. So, and you know what, let me take a step back. Let me explain to you what that is. So, when you create a spline, so 2 dots are a straight line. That's still a spline, but it looks no different than the straight line. The difference is when I have the spline, I can click on it and I can then control the curvature and the arc that the spline is doing. So, what we have is we have 3 things that we can control and adjust. At the very start of the curve, we can control what is the angle that it goes up at. So here, you can see there's a little diamond, triangle, whatever you want to call it. If I click on that, I can adjust the degree from the point here. So you can kind of see I'm adjusting the degree from where it last was. Let me just do one thing here quickly. We're not going to get too detailed into dimensioning your splines in that because that kind of comes in with draft and all that later. But you can see that I can adjust the angle. Now, the next is I can adjust the length of the curvature. So you can kind of see here it's coming out. And you can see the curvature 1400, whatever. I can adjust that and drag it out. Now what I'm doing is I'm clicking on just the arrow. So clicking on just the triangle allows me just to adjust the angle. I can't do anything else other than the angle for that point. Clicking on just the arrow, I can't adjust the angle, just the length. So you can see here now where I was at 1400, basically I've adjusted the radius to be greater. I can tighten it back down and I can adjust the radius that way. Now, when you're playing, if you select the dot at the end, that allows you to adjust the length and the curvature and all that at the same time. Now, rate of curvature. So I want to have my show curvature on because that's going to tell me the higher these spikes basically means the smaller the radius, so the tighter it is. Over here, you can see that the radius is considerably bigger. So as I can adjust this, I can get it to be, okay, it's smooth, it's consistent. It still is flat here. It's got more contour here and then flattens back out here. As we get into that later, we'll discuss how that affects your highlights too. That'll be a separate class. What we can also do is you can see here now where you're starting to get, we talked last week or last class about ship curves, French curves. You can kind of start seeing what we're getting there now by adjusting this. Now we can also come back and adjust the other side. So you can start getting the curve to do multiple things, more so than just a singular sweep. It now has a little bit more dynamic. So here, rate of curvature is great. It flattens out a little bit, but then it accelerates again. And when we talk about acceleration, the acceleration of a curve is equivalent to when a surface starts to contour quicker or faster. And that is where you'll also hear people talk about, well, as you look at a product, and grab something that has a lot of highlights when you get a chance and turn it in the light, but turn it at a constant speed, you will see that the highlights, as they go in certain areas, it feels as if they're going faster or slower. That's because that surface is accelerating and curved like this versus just all flat. Does that make sense? I'm going through a lot here and it's maybe a little bit all over the place.
Is this being recorded right now?
Yes. Does this make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, so whatever. Here's what I want to do now. I'm going to do a quick little demo to show. Let's get out of here. Okay. So later on, we'll talk a little bit about why we don't necessarily want to do a curve to do too much, because it can become cumbersome. So if we look at this quick, really basic side profile of a car, and I start looking at my curves and my surfaces, I have a curve here, separate surface here potentially, surface down here. I've got a curve here and a curve here. I could come in and say, oops, hold on. I got that turned on. That's on my right plane. I want to do a sketch. There we go. I could come in and say, okay, well, I'm going to do here. I'm going to do here. I'm going to do here. And I'm just going to do a whole lot of clicks to try to get that top surface. Now, my sketch is gospel. That's what I love. So now I've got to match it. I'm going to turn on my curvature, and you can kind of see it's all over the place, which might be expected. when you see this where the combs switch, that's called an inflection. It means that your surface is going from concave to convex, or convex to concave. Are you guys familiar with that term?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. So what I have to do now is I have to come in and try to tweak things to get it to be the way I want. But you know what? I don't want that there, so I got to come in. And you can see how, like, I'm going to have to spend a whole lot of time trying to get this right. And you can even see here, the yellow doesn't show up very well, but you can kind of see where it really becomes a nightmare. So if you are trying to use splines and have a whole lot of points, it can be cumbersome. I personally will never use more than maybe 4 points at the max. I would rather build multiple curves, because what I can do is I'll build then multiple surfaces and then intersect them later. So again, blocking in my primary things. So this one curve here, I always start with 2. I'm going to start at the start and at the end. So I want my surfaces to be overbuilt, and I'm going to trim them back. Therefore, my curves need to be overbuilt. So we'll come in, we'll turn on curvature, show curvature combs. You can see nothing shows up because there is no curvature yet. So I'm going to come in. And you can see the moment I adjust it, it shows up. Now that shows up way too big. There we go. I'm going to drop this one down here. And sometimes I may not, like, so it's a hand sketch. So I still want to know, I envision what I want. I want a clean Audi style singular line that has, I don't like swoopy. I want a nice clean front to back progression. But I may just play with this a little bit and adjust it to see how I like it. And I'm going to say that looks good. I don't want it any inflections. But you can see how much nicer and easier that is to work with. Now, the next I would do, and I wouldn't necessarily do a whole lot of the sketches all at once or the lines at once. But the next I want to do is, okay, I can just simply extrude that. That gives me my base surface. But because it's just an extrude surface, and I'm only using one spline, I get no contour. Why am I not in perspective? I get no contour. It's a flat surface. Oh, let me turn that off. Come on. So it's just a flat surface. Well, that may not be what I want. I want to be able to have some contour in it. Now, for this particular model, I don't necessarily have a front view. I just had a side and top view. But if I had a front view, it would be very easy for me to determine what I wanted to do. So I'm going to come in. I'll create a plane. Is that? So I'll create a plane. I'm going to do a sketch on there. Oh, hold on. Where am I here? And what I want to do is, now I am going to do some things because we talked about building things in half. So if I'm going to create my splines and I'm going to build them in half, here's my center line. And let's say I've got my front view and I'm going to make my surface look like this. Let's turn on our curvature combs because I always want to be evaluating where I'm at. Let's say I want it to fall off a little bit. Okay. So now what I can do is say, oh, didn't quite work there. I forgot to do one thing. That's fine. We'll just do this in place for now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, now I'm going to do a swept surface. I'm going to use this as my profile. And then I'm going to use that as my guide. Oh, shoot. I don't have a choice. I got to do that. Hold on one second. Insert reference geometry plane. There. So my problem is I did not have my sketch on there. So what I'm going to do now, and here's a quick fix. I'm going to take this sketch. I'm going to right click it. And if I can find that, I'm going to edit sketch plane. Nope. Let me go back here. Take this, move that back one. There we go. I can go right, edit sketch plane. I'm going to put it on this sketch plane. There we go. And now that should pierce. So now I should be able to sweep it. So now I've got my surface. Now here's the thing. Okay, so I'm going to build this in half. There's always a danger of building things in half. The feature that, just so you know, that Spencer and I were talking about is in Alias. I can turn it on so that whatever I build over here, it automatically mirrors it on the other side. But anyways, if I was to take this now and to mirror it over, let's go. So we're going to mirror that face. We'll hit select. Now you can we can see that's our surface there. Well, I want to stitch it together. Now, I don't know, can any of you see already that there's a problem?
Yep.
Okay. When it's in your curve, you may not notice it. But again, I talked about this before. The further you go, the bigger the problem becomes. So here, I'm going to take this, and really, there's tools I can use for surfacing to evaluate. You know, so once I have a surface, the deviation analysis, what is the angle? But the problem is it has to be between two surfaces. So this is still two separate surfaces with two separate edges. So I always want to check to make sure. So I'm going to come in under my surfacing tools. I'm going to stitch or knit the two faces. I'm going to right click. And now you can see there's a black line. So it tells me that these two surfaces are joined. One of the things as we're building models, I want you guys to turn this on at all times. You go under View, Display, and then make sure Tangent Edges as Phantom. What that means is any edge that is tandem, it will show up as a dotted line. So right off the bat, I know that that's not tangent because there's no dotted line there. Now let's see how bad it is. This is where I can come in and I can say, let's evaluate. We'll click on deviation analysis, calculate, and what it's telling me is what is the maximum degree between these surfaces? So what is the angle? So along here, I've got an angle of 2.15 degrees, which is showing up in that highlight. If I hit my zebra stripes, there you can really, really, really see it. Horrible and ugly. So if that's in there, it always relates back to my curves. So what I'm going to do is come back and say, okay, well, it must have been my spline. I'm going to go back in I'll find that spline. We're going to edit it. The spline's doing what I want, but then if I zoom in really close, or if I come in and I really increase the curvature, so now you can start seeing how it dives in more. So what you can see is that it's at an angle. So there's that 2.5 degree or 2.15 degree angle. The problem is that this curve, when I mirror it over, is not tangent. So if I was to take this curve here and mirror it over, you can see where they dive in. In order for them to be tangent, these would need to be at 90 degree angle of this main line. So, a couple ways of doing that. One way that I do is I will draw the center line or a guideline, have it come off at 90 degrees. Always make sure it's 90 degrees or that it's horizontal. And then what I'll do is I'll click the line, Control, click the other line, and now I can get all my relationships. So what I can say is make this tangent. I want to make sure that at this part that this surface is equal. And there you can kind of see how it picked up there. Now, you can still see how much of a radius. So I can still adjust the rate of curvature, but when I mirror this over, it's hard to see. It's always going to be perfectly, how can I say it? Tangent at that point. So if I was to exit out of here, and then let's see what this will do. Okay, I now see my phantom line back, which means that between these two surfaces, that's tangent. Let's do the quick deviation analysis. And now you can see that, so blue means, as you see on the left-hand side screen, blue means good, 0 deviation. Now, I have absolutely 0 deviation between these two surfaces, perfectly smooth across there. Another way of doing this, if you don't want to have to constantly be mirroring stuff, and that's what I don't like to do, is mirror them sometimes all of the time because it's a lot of extra steps. So what I'll do is, especially if it's like a car and I'm going to be building just one half, whatever surface goes across the middle, I will build that as one complete surface. But there can be problems with that. And the problem that a lot of people experience is, well, if I'm going to do this, then I have to build the spline all the way across. So let's just say I'll do this. I'm going to build the spline, and I want it to be I'm even going to do a few more things. I'm going to make sure that the 2 points are the same on each side. So I'll take this construction line, I'll mirror it over here. Nope. So that way I know that they're going to both start on both sides. So they're going to be mirrored. So I'm going to come in, and then I'm going to do this. But then it's still not a mirrored line because I have to make sure that I plug and play, or I move them both around and get them perfect. So here's what I like to do. I add another step. I will toss in a top line. I will then use 3 point. So one there, and one there. So I'm starting to get my curve. And what I can do is I can drag things in and out to get that shape now, knowing that it's always going to be perfect at this point. But I can still have problems where I can adjust it, but it's not mirrored anymore. So once I do that, what I'll do is, okay, I'm going to come in. I've got that controlled. I've got that controlled. I'm going to take this. I'll make it tangent to that. And then what I'll do is I know that this is always going to be tangent there. So I'm going to mirror that curve over. So now I have a mirrored spline. Let's turn on curvature combs here. Nice, oops, let me just turn that off here. But now what I can do, oh come on, is I can adjust it, and you'll see if I turn on combs for both. This is what I hate about, it gets hard to see things sometimes. You can see that it is staying symmetrical at all times. So I'm only adjusting one spline, but I'm pretty much guaranteed that when I build that thing or that spline, it's going to be symmetrical. So it helps me to ensure that I'm getting a constant surface. And then what I'll do is, if I need to tweak and pull, I'll trim it back later. So let's just delete out of here because I want to show another thing here quickly. So we've got our one surface built. Then I'm going to just quickly, we'll build the next surface. And again, I always start with one CV or 2 points. And if I can get it from there, then I will. If I have to add one. And again, for me, so much time is spent on the curves, because if I can't get the curves right, everything else will fail. So we've got that. Now what I will do, and I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing, but I'll show you in a little bit, or the next class, what we want to do different. So I'm now going to come in. We've got that. We will go with, top. Good enough. What just happened there? Oh. Okay. And then, you know what? We're just going to do something really simple here. But you can kind of see what I'm doing is I'm overbuilding all my surfaces. So that's going to be the taper for my window. Let's just go to a top view here quickly. So, and I probably wouldn't build in the radiuses. I would do that after the fact. Just because, again, they're going to be the transition surfaces. I'm going to cheat really bad here and just for the sake of speed, not add contour forms to these lines. Well, and you can see that I did not draw in my center line, so I know that that's going to be off. Oh, come on.
Hey Travis, I do want to just tell you it is 8:31. You can like finish your demo and stuff. I just wanted to like let you know.
Oh, yeah. If you guys want to stay on, we can keep going. I just want to get to the point to at least trim this stuff back so you guys can see that.
I'm fine with staying on.
So now I did not necessarily add any form to these side cutouts. That's the reason they look very flat. But you can kind of see now, all of a sudden, I've got all the components that I can start trimming with. Now, this is where normally, you know, it depends on what you can see and what you want to do. But what I would then do is, I've got this, and this is where we're talking about the overbuilding. I'm going to come in and let me just first get this top part. So we'll take this. Let's hide that. We'll hide that, not that. So when you did solid modeling, we used a lot of cuts and things of that nature. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a whole lot of trims. So that's going to be a tool that you might become, that you're going to start using a whole lot. So if we come in and we say we want to trim these two surfaces, we'll come into our surface section. Where are we here? Trim surfaces down here. We'll click on it. It's going to ask for standard or mutual. Basically, standard is that you're trimming something with a tool. So if I say, you know what, I'm going to use this surface to trim back this. And you can kind of see the purple is what's left over. That is what stays. And I'm just going to hit yes. And you can see now that that's what I have left for that surface. The problem is I don't necessarily have this surface here. The wall panel is still separate. So maybe I want it to keep that or use that. So if I come back, we can come down and we can edit the feature and we can change it and go, okay, well, we kept the selection. Do we want to remove the selection? Which means that by removing the selection, I now keep that small piece. So you've got different options when you trim it of what do you want to keep, what do you want to throw away. Let's continue. Mutual means that what it's going to do is it's going to trim both surfaces. So it's not you're cutting with one and you're cutting away the other. You're going to trim both of them mutually. So for in this situation where, well, I want to keep the top, but I also want to keep the side because that's going to be my window or the window form. I'm going to come in and, oh, hold on, let's just do this first. We're going to use this surface and this surface, and then it's going to ask for keep what selection, or I can select what I want to remove. That becomes handy, you know, like if the part that you want to keep is really large, you know, and it's easy to click on that, then it helps. If the part that you want to get rid of is really large, it's just a matter of what do you want to click on. So for this, we're going to say we want to keep this. We want to keep this. I think it's doing it. And we want to keep this. So now you can kind of see that it's kept that surface. And at the same time, when I trimmed it, it converted it from 2 surfaces to 1. So this is now considered 1 surface, even though it's got 2 faces. You can also see that black line, therefore it's not tangent, which we didn't want. Now what we want to do is let's take the next one and we can say, okay, let's show this one up, show that one up, and show this up. Now we can say, well, hey, we want to trim all these surfaces together so that this is going to give us our front panel, our side panel, and then our back panel. Oh, that's going to be an issue I'll have to fix, and I'll show you that in a second. So in order to trim these back, let's just do that now. And there's a whole bunch of different ways of doing it, you know, what order you're doing it in. So let's say we're going to do mutual again because we want to keep all of the stuff. We want to trim this one, and this one. And the sections we want to keep, we're going to keep this, we'll keep this, and we'll keep this. So now you can see I've got that form. What happened here? Okay, so here's something I didn't do right. In order to trim things back, they have to intersect and go across. So this is part of the reason why you always want to overbuild. Well, I didn't pay attention. My top view sketch is not at the bottom of the car, so when I extruded it up, it doesn't actually come down past this surface. Well, easy enough to fix, because if I come back in, now ideally I wouldn't want to have to fix it like this because I should have had my sketches in the right orientation. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back and we'll go blind up to mid plane, and we're just going to do both directions. So now you can see that I come all the way through the bottom there. So what I can then do is go, oh, but hold on a second here. This surface doesn't come out far enough. Or does it? Just barely, but I don't know if that'll work. But let's see. What I can then do is go and say, okay, let's trim these back. And we're going to do mutual. So again, this is now is 1 surface, multiple faces. And we're going to use this one as well. And we are going to, we'll just go with remove. So we'll remove that. Oh, but it's not letting me. We're going to remove that. And then we're going to remove that. Oh, and you can kind of see, and I'm going to remove that, but you can see it didn't do it all at one part. So that means this didn't come out far enough. So I want to make sure this extends out far enough. This is kind of, you know, these things happen, but it's because I don't have my proper sketches in. If I had had a front profile, I would have known how far it came out. But easily enough fixed, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in, edit my sketch, and we will just pull this out a little bit. Now you can see I've updated my surface. I'll also get into a reason why we want to overbuild here in a second. So I'm going to take this, I will trim them back. This surface and this surface. Hold on, I just want to think if I want to do something here first. Yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to take this, I want to remove the top. And now you can see that it clearly moves everything away. We'll remove that. And I did that backwards. Remove selections. There we go. So now you can kind of see I'm starting to get the form of my car here. I still don't have everything built in because this is still two separate parts. So let's blend that in now. So what we can do is come back in and go, we'll trim that back. We're going to use this surface and this surface. Section, we're going to remove that. We want to remove that. See, and this is kind of, yeah, so I'm not happy with this, the way this is going, because I'm having to remove too many weird looking things and it's hard to see. So what I'm going to do is before I do this trim back, I'm going to come back here. I'll hide this surface. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this back here now. So I'll come back in, I'll go trim. Let's just delete that out of there. We're going to use that. We're doing a mutual trim. And that we will keep. Whoops. What is going on here? I'm having a graphical issue here. Okay, so that goes there, that goes there, that goes there. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, let's try one more thing here. So usually what this means sometimes is that the surface isn't properly intersecting, but I'm not seeing how it's not. So when in doubt, try it a different way. So we're going to use this trim tool. So what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of taking a multiple step. So what I'm going to do next is this part still has that surface. So instead of doing it all in one by doing the mutual, I'm doing it in two steps. As long as these edges are touching this surface, I can then do another trim command. And let me clear that out. I can use this as my trim tool. And I can remove this section. So now you can see what happened is it didn't stitch them together because it didn't do a mutual command. So that's one of the disadvantages of doing it that way. But what I can do is I can then stitch them together. But one of the things, and we'll get into this later, but one of the things is, well, should maybe I have put in my radius in here first before doing the trim back? So let's just say I wanted to do that. I go over here. I can click on my fillet. Let's just make it curvature. Let's make it bigger. We'll do that. And then what we'll do is we'll now go back and face trim or trim it. Wait, what am I doing here? Clear that. Trim tool is this. We're going to keep this. Okay, and then the next trim tool, we'll trim it again. The trim tool is this. We will keep this. What we can then do is, now I can't put a radius in here because the surfaces aren't connected yet. So what I could potentially do is put in a face fillet, because I can select this face, and this face, and then select that face. I don't think it's going to do it. Whoops. No, it's not going to do it. Come on. There we go. I had to get the angles right. But I'm not getting the fillet or the radius that I want because it's going weird. We talked about this once before. We can come in and do chord width. And you can see that it makes it all the same size. Still looking a little weird, but you know, hey, want to dump that radius in now. So let's now pull up the next part. I have to re-edit that trim command since I did so many weird things. So let's edit that. Let's just clear everything out. And we're going to do a mutual. And then we'll remove this and this. We've got that. Now we can start tossing in, potentially doing our radiuses. And I'm just doing some really bad radiuses right now. You can also start tossing in variable radiuses, and we'll get into that later. But let's go with the, what end is it here? Oh, never mind. I'll show you guys that later. So there you can start seeing now it's really not pretty. There's a whole lot more I'd want to do to this. But you can start seeing that we're getting the basis of the car. And then let's go back. We'll mirror it over. We should be perfect because we did all that work in the beginning to make sure. Oh, it's a long day. Now, when I'm mirroring it, much like when you mirror things with solids, you can have merged solids on. But since this isn't a solid, you want to put knit surfaces on. That just saves you a step of having to stitch it afterwards. Now, when I go to do this, there's that anticipation of opening up your Christmas package. I so badly want to see that dashed line that goes along here. What? Why won't it let me knit? See, so I did do something wrong. Interesting. So somewhere, what that means is I did not. Oh, somewhere I did not do something right in one of my lines, because when I mirrored it over, it didn't knit properly. So that's where somehow I stupidly missed a step. This is where it's a pain, because now it's a matter of, well, at what point did I get it wrong? I probably should have made sure that at each time as I went, I did a check. So now the thing is well, what I need to do is go back and say, okay, where did I not get it right? So I'm going to come in. I'm going to go to features.
I think Josh is trying to say something, but he's
Oh.
muted.
Do I muted him? Oh,
Yeah, from a
he's
while
still
ago, I
muted from a
think.
while ago? That happens?
Hello?
There you go, Josh.
I can hear you, Josh.
Yeah. Hey Travis, I always that always seemed to have like an issue, I think, with mirroring. I think it's just a software issue because it's never an issue that you did in the model. 'Cause there's, I don't know, for some reason that always happens to me when I'm doing a solid form, but there's no issues with the solid form. You can make like a cube and try to merge another cube together, and it always would say issue with merging or something like that.
Huh.
I don't know. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I just, so these, but thank you. But you can see here, like, we just mirrored it over and everything is tangent. So that's obviously not the issue there. But it's
Yeah.
still one of those things where I don't want to go that.
You know what?
It's super buggy. I think it's just a program or like just the tool of the mirroring to itself. Because why would not a solid form merge with another solid form? You know what I'm saying? If they're both the same measurements, so it's just, I don't know.
No, I hear you.
Can I say something real quick?
Yep, go right ahead.
I don't know if this is true or not, or it may not affect it, but it might. But I just thought a difference between tangency, because for solids, I know for sure that I'd made all of whatever cross sections I was lofting between tangent on the side that I'd be mirroring, and I could still have something off. And I think what that may have been is because just being a loft between like each cross section might be tangent, but in between there, unless you have. But then again, I had a guide curve too, which doesn't make sense. But I don't know. It might be the difference between lofting and sweeping.
Mm-hmm.
That a sweep would make sense that it. I don't know enough things. There'd be a difference, I would think, at least. And
Yeah.
Lately, what I've been doing sometimes just to be on the safe side if I need to, if I'm lofting between 2 or 3 or more cross sections, rather than draw half the cross section and then loft it and then mirror it, often in the sketch I'll just mirror that, and that way I know for sure when I loft between each one that it'll be tangent, because it's lofting the whole section and not just half.
So I'm just looking at something here because I think I see what I did wrong.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes good sense. But there is.
It may take a little longer because you're mirroring within each sketch, but I found that to be a kind of foolproof.
Yeah. And you're good. Sometimes it takes more steps, but it makes it more foolproof. For some reason, I am missing something here that I've done that is preventing me from going. Because if I look, that's all lined, that's all lined. That's on the plane. So I'm not sure what I'm missing. Oh, so there we go. Here's what's going on. For some reason, this fillet, when I put it in, went all the way past for whatever reason. So you can kind of see, so now I'm going to try to mirror it over, and it's not going to mirror because that fillet goes across it.
Are you
So-
looking at a true top view?
Yep, that's a true top view. So that's one of those things where many times you've got to be careful because it doesn't control it. Now, normally, if I was doing a surface design like this, and I'll show you guys a freebie here, I would never actually ever put a fillet in. I would put the fillet in to get the base shape, but then what I would do is I would come in, I would delete these faces, well, you can see I don't have something nice there. Hold on, let me just do one thing.
Is that back surface longer than the top surface? And that's why it would fillet it out further than...
Yeah. So, but if I was to do this, what I would normally do, delete these faces, because I want to have much more control over what I'm doing. And then I would come in, do a sketch.
But do you know what I'm saying? Like, is that front face sticking out further than the right plane?
Oh, no, it's not. It's
Okay.
just, sometimes when you put radiuses in, it extends it beyond. So, but what I'm doing here now is I know where I want the radius to start and to finish.
You're getting more of an exact
No,
profile.
maybe, yeah, maybe you are right.
Because that's the only reason I could think that it would connect the dots and make it stick out further.
Yep, I think you're right. For some reason I did that. So, I think it's because I'm having brain farts because it's my day started at 4 o'clock. So, general purpose was to show you guys some of the fillets or some of the splines, and then a quick example of, you know, overbuilding and then trimming back. Now, of course, I also blocked in the base forms. There'd be a whole lot more that we would do. But this is a good example of you build the forms, you trim them back, and then you would go in and do even more detail once you get that done. So before I talk about what I'll talk about next, so next week what I want to show you is the edge to edge. Nope, that's not him. Sorry. No. Maybe that should be a bonus project. We all get to model up Stefan.
I'll do it.
So what we'll do next week, this model here is something that I would build edge to edge. I would create my profile lines, this outside boundary, this inside, this middle boundary, and then this inside boundary. And then I would create my contour lines to sculpt it versus trimming everything back. So I'll walk through, I'll continue with this base model here for trimming back and show you some of the advantages and disadvantages of that. And then we'll walk through this model, which will show you some advantages and disadvantages of doing what's, you know, edge to edge surface modeling.
Okay.
So let me just pause here, stop the recording.